Tonight, the left is going wild again, this time over a new report about a meeting between the president's eldest son, Donald Trump Jr., and a Russian lawyer during the 2016 campaign.
This, in effect, is everything that people have been looking for. This is not only devastating to their narrative, I think it's also potentially incriminating.
We're going to find that not only was there collusion, I believe there was, but money laundering, and a lot more is going to be unveiled. And as I've always said, Trump and his allies are going to lead right to impeachment.
If this story is true, we'd have one of them, if not both of them, in custody by now, and we'd be asking them a lot of questions, because this is unacceptable. This borders on treason. If it is not itself treason.
Don Jr. has acknowledged he and other Trump team members met with a Kremlin-linked attorney after being told she might have helpful information for his father's campaign, but says she ultimately didn't have anything, and the meeting went nowhere. Here's Britt Hume's take.
This appears to be, once again, much ado about not much. This meeting was apparently a fiasco. Donald Trump agreed to meet with this person whose identity he says he didn't even know. Yeah, Donald Trump Jr., excuse me. This is one more case where we have evidence of a contact of some kind with somebody connected to Russia, but no evidence of collusion.
Okay, so Greg, do you agree with the esteemed Mr. Hume?
Well, I would hate to disagree with him since we are such close friends.
Right.
But if a shady female from a nefarious country approached Bill Clinton with dirt, he would take the dirt, her hotel room key, and possibly her underwear. This is nothing new. I mean, doesn't anybody watch The Americans? That this has been going on for decades.
Right.
That this stuff happens. And all Donald Trump Jr. did was exactly what the media has been doing for the last 6 months, was he was promised dirt on collusion between Hillary and Russia. So he just went out to check it out, which is what the press has been doing with Trump for the last 6 or 7 months. The only difference is he saw that it was bogus and he checked out pretty early. Meanwhile, the networks are continuing to feed off this roadkill forever.
Okay, they're doing the Russia aha again, Dana. But so what do you make of this story, and does it surprise you?
Well, I would say for reporters or for people that are watching the story closely, there's an old adage in journalism school, don't get ahead of the reporting. But I would say for the White House communications team, I would get ahead of the reporting.
Right.
Because they got surprised by this. There have been 3 different explanations as to how it all went down. And they finally got to the one that I think makes the most sense. And it doesn't prove any collusion, but it also doesn't look good. I would not want to have to get a big lawyer right now in order to try to defend me for this. But they had 3 people in the meeting, Manafort, Kushner, and Trump Jr., and none of them happened to remember this until they were presented with the information by the press. But now that we have this information, I think that it also shows that it was 2 days after President Trump had secured the nomination, but they were still worried about what might happen at the convention. And I understand why they make that pivot to okay, well, now we're going to have to start going after Hillary Clinton. One thing I think that's the most important thing to do is if you get asked to have a meeting with somebody and you don't know their name, you're not really, the most important thing you can do is, who is this person? And what do they really want? The first explanation was that she wanted to talk about Russian adoptions in America. I actually think that is a really good issue, and I do hope the Trump administration addresses it. But I'd also say that there's a judgment call to make. So is it worth me having this meeting, and is it worth me asking the campaign manager and also the brother-in-law to come in to have the meeting? So then you have a judgment call on that. And also, always bring a lawyer to these meetings. Always.
Right.
Because that way you protect yourself and others, and you don't have to have a kerfuffle. Whether this leads to anything or not, I have no idea. But I would say that the White House, I'm sure that they wish from a communication standpoint they could get ahead of this story so that they can stop having every Monday start with it.
Yeah, well, also, Jesse, if you're the president, you're getting pretty frustrated because the communications team behind the 8 ball, and certainly in this situation, it's got to be personally very upsetting to him because this is his son, who obviously was very active, during the campaign. Also, I'm thinking back, well, who was looking out for him, for his family, to make sure not, have him in a position like this? But that being said, do you think that there is anything here?
I don't. I think if Trump Jr. puts Russian dressing on a salad, they're going to say it's treason. I think some wacky lawyer from Russia came over and wanted to set up a meeting, and it was under the pretext of dirt on Hillary. She didn't have it, then pivoted to the Russian human rights adoption deal, and they were like, all right, later, I'll see. And the whole thing was set up by this Democratic firm that was connected to the fake Trump-Russian dossier, so that's could be a setup. We don't even know that. Also, Jared and Paul Manafort, the campaign manager at the time, did volunteer this contact when they were asked about it by investigators. It didn't come out randomly. It was volunteered. And I'll tell you some other things. You know what else is a little more sketchy than I think than this?
What?
Hillary accepting and soliciting million-dollar checks from Saudi tycoons, and Bill Clinton being paid $500,000 by the Kremlin bank at the same time Hillary's State Department is allowing uranium deposits to be pushed over to the Russians? Or how about John Podesta, Hillary campaign manager, sitting on the same board as a bunch of other Putin friends, taking in millions of dollars of Russian investment into that company, not disclosing that either? There's a lot of risky things. What about the DNC server?
Yeah.
That still has not been turned over to federal investigators. We're supposed to believe it was hacked by the Russians? Okay, prove it. Claire McCaskill, Comrade Claire, they call her now, because she said she never met with the Russian ambassador. It turns out she had dinner at his house, called him on the phone, and donated to his charity. So I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit on this story, and if it gets too hot, I'd reopen the Hillary Clinton email investigation, and I'd do it tomorrow.
Okay, so bottom line here is where's the wrongdoing? Where's the crime or the inappropriate contact?
Well, if you're asking me, I mean, I think it's so obvious, and I think that's why Jesse's running like a sprinter. It looks like Usain Bolt trying to get away from the story.
I'm getting ahead of the story.
Yeah, you are
taking my
running
advice.
away. Wow.
From the Great Point Journal of Perino.
The problem here is lack of disclosure up front. I think if Don Jr. had been up front about it and said, I had this meeting when he was first asked about it, he said, no such meeting. You had nobody. It wasn't until people who are in the White House, which is an interesting part of the story. This story comes from people in the White House who saw some of these disclosure forms and then said to reporters, hey, guess what? Don Jr. was involved. So you guys think, wait, this is coming from inside the Trump White House? That's weird. But the second part is that you have people like Paul Manafort as the campaign chairman taking time to go into this meeting. And what Richard Painter, the lawyer for the Bush folks, said, hey, you don't get your opposition research from spies. That's nuts. That's clearly un-American.
Bill Clinton's White House lawyer also said there's nothing here.
She's clearly tied in to Putin. She's clearly tied into major...
That's not the statement that they released.
I don't know who released it, but I don't think there's any doubt about her ties.
We can't keep track of all the lawyers that are in Russia.
In fact, they said that this meeting was set up by somebody who was involved in the beauty pageant, and she is a close friend, her family, close friends with the Putin family. What? It gets so bizarre. Nothing is to be proven by this, but the lack of forthcoming, gestures by not only Don Jr., but by others.
Don Jr. doesn't have to disclose anything.
No,
it came out because of leaks. No.
Yeah, leaks
Kushner and Manafort voluntarily disclosed the meeting details.
Right. So
and then people asked Trump Jr. about it. But who's leaking?
The White Trump White House.
Which congressional investigators are leaking? Someone's
You're wrong.
leaking.
It's not. It's inside the White House. That's what I think must be disturbing you and causing you to run like a bolting horse.
Do I look disturbed?
See, just to your point about, anybody who works in Russia is Kremlin linked, okay? Because it's essentially state-owned. Businesses are state-owned by Russia. So if you got a job, you're my wife's father was a diplomat. That makes me Kremlin linked.
I knew it.
So that's where
I can't be at this table.
Let's collude.
I get the feeling that when I'm listening to these stories, it's like the media, the Democrats are litigating a bad relationship, a past bad relationship. It's like you got dumped, but you got to keep talking about your ex.
Right.
So it's now 7, 8 months later, and any small thing that happens, every beginning of the week, you trace back to your ex. It's always about Trump, Trump, Trump. There's a fly in my soup. Oh, my ex used to drink soup.
With
from a thermos with flies in it.
There was a big Kushner story, what was it, a week and a half ago that was front page news, breaking news. I don't even remember what it is anymore.
But Jesse, remember
I don't.
I don't either.
Do you remember? I don't remember what it is.
Knows. But this is also, when you think about it, go back to the campaign time, and everybody's well documented, like you said, that Hillary has a history of accepting money, Chinese donations, Saudi donations, corruption with the Clinton Foundation. So when you hear, okay, I have evidence about this, and you're running a campaign, okay, well, you want to hear, what is the evidence about this? So in terms of that act or conduct, what is there wrong with actually finding out information about who you're running against? I mean, Juan's problem is he said, well, he didn't disclose it, but Jared did disclose it, and Paul Manafort did disclose it, and then it was leaked from there. So, I mean, so are we going to still talk about this?
Okay, so let me tell you.
I don't know where this goes. I'm just trying to see where the legal tail is to this.
I don't know either. I don't think this is, conclusive, and I don't think this is the deal. But let me just tell you that when you see the president's inner circle taking a meeting with somebody, and by their own admission, or at least Don Jr.'s admission, we weren't sure who this person was. But they know that it's a Russian, and they know that this person says they have opposition research. That's pretty damning. And
it's not damning, Juan. There's nothing illegal about having a meeting with a Russian who says she says Oppo and Hillary. There's nothing illegal about it. You know who said that? Jack Quinn, Bill Clinton's White House lawyer.
Let me just suggest to you what's going on, Jesse.
I just told you.
What you have is the Russians playing the Trump campaign, trying to give them information, orchestrating an effort to get
There wasn't
Hillary
anything
Clinton.
to give.
Oh, in other words, they don't want Hillary Clinton
to win.
They
had nothing.
They are now interfering in an American election, and that is wrong. Not only wrong,
okay, well, when the Saudis give $5 million to Hillary,
they didn't
and expect nothing in return.
Campaign
to the Clinton Foundation. Juan, why did all the foundation donations dry up after she lost?
I am not a fan of the Clinton Foundation, but that has nothing, zero to do with what we're discussing tonight, except for you trying to run away from a very difficult story.
I have an excellent communications question for Dana Perino.
Okay.
All right, Dana, so when we talked about the communications team in the beginning of this segment so long ago, what do you think that they need to do now to try to fix this situation?
I don't think it's their fault that they didn't have the information. I think that when I say they need to get ahead of the story, that means that somebody in the White House, I think it has to come from the president or through the chief of staff, that says, everybody in my office now, lay it out on the table. I want to hear it all so that these people know what they're getting to.
Yeah.
I am very curious. I'm not going to go chase it down, but I am curious about the sourcing because it's three advisors to the White House. That doesn't necessarily mean they're inside the White House. That could be people who are outside the White House who call in all the time.
Could be TripAdvisor.
It also could be TripAdvisor's true.
They're up to a lot of things, including Russian trips.
There's a whole bunch of reasons these types of coordinated leaks happen because these are three advisors to the White House. So to me, that sounds like they coordinated, and it possibly is because they know something worse is coming, so they want to get out in front of it, or something that's going to look worse, and maybe it isn't worse. But to me, the sourcing is really interesting, and I think that they have tried to protect the president.
Right.
Because Sarah Huckabee Sanders said today at the White House that he only found out about this within the last day or so.
What do you mean when you say something worse is going to happen?
I don't know. Because there's ongoing. Well, how? So
why would they leak to?
Because let's say that. Okay, let me give you a scenario.
Yeah.
So a reporter calls me at the White House and says, "Hey, so I got this story coming up," and I'm like, "Whoa, okay, that sounds interesting." I go to see the National Security Advisor. I'm like, "Did you hear about this?" They're like,
yeah.
Okay, let me get back to you." And then I think that's when all of my alarm bells go off and think, "Holy." You know what? Something else is coming.
Okay.
So that's why I'm not saying I don't know, but I do think that the sourcing is really interesting. Either they were trying to protect somebody to make him look worse, or they're trying to get out in front of something, or they're just out to get him.
Or
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's a revenge thing. Maybe it's somebody.
But it doesn't. That to me doesn't mean deep state.
No.
Three advisors to the White House is not your average bureaucrat.
And it's not Congress, Jesse. It's not Congress.